Hello, I'm Nancy, and thank you for joining us on the OWASP DevSlop show. On today's show, our guest is Principal Consultant for Microsoft Consulting Services, Simone Curzi. He is one of the leaders of the worldwide Microsoft community on application security and an SME for the security community. He is here to talk to us about threat modeling and the tool he authored, Threats Manager Studio, TMS. Faith.
Hey, I'm Faith Appeal, and I'm here with my lovely co-hosts, Nikki and Tanya Janka.
Hi, if you are new here, please make sure to subscribe to our channel and enable your notifications so you actually find out when we have cool, awesome new shows. All important information that we'll discuss here will be added to the description box below so that you can always find it after if you watch a show. Nikki?
Hey everyone, how are you? Very festive season, so we're excited to be here today with our festive gear. So it's a full house today. There's a lot of participants on the show. So we invited 3 threat modeling practitioners to help participate in the conversation. So I want to introduce them individually and let them sort of introduce themselves. So let's start with Rebecca.
Hi everyone,
Hey.
I'm Rebecca. I do threat modeling as a senior security consultant in Australia. It's quite early here, so I'm excited to be part of the show.
Great to have you, Rebecca. Isaiah?
Hi, everybody. These days, I'm focused mostly on offensive attack simulations, but I have in the past done threat modeling, and I help folks do that post offensive attack simulations to show how they could have stopped what we do.
Ooh, sounds great. Cool. And Rahul?
Hello, this is Rahul from B45. Been working on threat modeling largely from an abuser case perspective, so I'm really keen to see what one's got to talk about, especially for someone who really believes threat modeling and is really like the blind man and the elephant. So I'm kind of really interested to see what that's on the table.
Great, cool. So we have a full house here. And Faith, you want to introduce our main star here?
Yeah, let's bring him in. Welcome, Simone.
Thank you very much. Really a great panel. I'm very happy to be here with you, and I'm humbled to see such a great set of people working on security, and I look forward to have a nice conversation with all of you.
So what's in the agenda for us? What do you have prepared for us today?
Well, yeah, the star of the show really is not me, is the Threats Manager Studio, which is a tool that I have developed over the last 3 years to address some important questions that were unsolved up to now. Essentially, what I want to give to the community, to Microsoft customers, to colleagues over the world is something that is both useful to create your own threat models to guide you, but also something that will help to get a good understanding on how you can what are the risks of your solution and how to address those risks. Also, there are a couple of other needs. Communication, also with business stakeholders, is a key topic that I think is very important. Quality is another key topic that I think is extremely important to introduce. So I look forward having this sort of discussions with all of you.
So should I share your screen, Simone?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Threats Manager Studio is really a tool that is highly customizable, and it is born to provide you a set of functionalities starting from a diagram and functionalities, and providing some very simple way to represent your threat model, your system, simple ways, drag and dropping items and representing elements of your system. The tool import allows also to define knowledge bases. So the idea is that nowadays we face very complex systems. We cannot really think anymore that we have solutions that have a single topic. So what I want to have with this tool is essentially a way to represent complex systems bottom up, having knowledge bases that would define, would represent single very specific subsystems, very specific technologies, and then you can mix and match those very specific technologies to create your set of knowledge. Consider, for example, typical systems on the cloud that would manage also big data, machine learning systems, and perhaps based on microservices architecture on Kubernetes, and perhaps integrating with the systems on premises, and so on and so forth. You have a very complex environment at that point that would require to import a lot of concepts, and those concepts would be difficult to represent, to understand. So having the possibility to mix and match those items, we can essentially have a representation that is specific of your problem space. Here you see what I've done has been to import a specific template for core Azure PaaS systems, and then I can drag and drop items in my canvas, and I can specify properties like request. I can also get other elements in the diagram, and I can essentially draw my diagram in a very simple way. When I'm done, I could use automatic threat generation functionalities that are based on rules that are essentially defined in those templates. So when I go now here, I see all the different threats that have been generated. And for all those threats, I have mitigations. So
Simone,
please, yes.
Is it possible for you to zoom in a little bit?
Let's try.
Thank you.
Also, can I ask like techie developer nerdy questions? What'd you build that in? Did you build it in .NET?
Yes, it's in .NET. It's based on perhaps something like that could help.
Well, we can't see now. There we go. Oh, now we can.
Okay, yes. So perhaps even a little more, perhaps could be even better.
Yeah, maybe a 150.
150 could be even better, yes. Okay, nothing is exploding. Okay, so yes, this is a WinFormal solution, simply because I'm based this on third-party libraries for which I own the license. So I was in a way compelled to use this approach. And this solution, essentially, what you can see here, yeah, is that I have the concept, those cycles represent the different threat events. So the problems that have been identified by the different rules. And for each problem, I have assigned automatically mitigations. So the solution knows not only the concept of threats, issues that would happen, but also the concept of mitigations. And actually, mitigations are at the very center of this system. The intent is to help the customers to understand what they can do. Not customers only, but of course, in my case, I work a lot with the customers for which I do threat models. This is very useful also for project teams. And typically, it is used to identify the various risks. And then to represent, to have a map of the potential mitigations, identifying a roadmap. So what are those mitigations that have been identified, when they can be done?
Simone, I have a quick question for you.
Please.
With the threats, are people able to build their own and add them in?
Great question. Thank you very much. Yes, the tool really is born to put you at the center. You as an expert. Some of you may know other tools for threat model, including the Microsoft threat modeling tool. And some of those tools have a problem, an original sin. And this original sin is that they are born to satisfy, to address people that are not experts. Essentially, to entirely guide the generation of threats for them. And what happens with those tools is that, yeah, the experts are not able to identify, to generate their own threats. They're not able to to include the value. This tool is completely different. The tool really is born taking into account this need. And in the initial incarnations, it didn't have automatic threat generation. In fact, actually, if you install it, and it may be interesting to show this. So let me, if I manage. Okay. This is the website for Threats Manager Studio when you can download it. If you go there and you go to the downloads page, you find a first link for installed Threats Manager Studio. This allows to install the main libraries also. But look down, extensions. So additional functionalities are installed separately, and you can install them or not install them. And the interesting thing here is that the automatic threat generation is an extension. It's not in the standard installation that you do. And this is intentional because the automatic threat generation is not essential for performing threat models from my point of view. In any case, if you install it, and in many cases that is useful, that will guide you in the not only the generating the threats based on rules that you can write. So this is an example of a rule. This is a very simple example. Let me check. Yeah, this is decision tree, you see, that is defined. And you can simply draw this decision tree on yourself. And you can even click and test and check if this decision tree really applies to your system or not. What can you do to answer the original question? If you decide, for example, that we have a problem, like, okay, this Azure storage contains files, is a place where users can upload their files. Now there is a problem because those files could be consumed. And when they are consumed, if they contain malware, they may infect some systems. So we wanted to consider this risk and to include mitigations like antiviruses. But if I click here, I see problems that are not really related to malicious content inside the files. So also here, there is nothing like that. So what should I do? I need to add the threat, specific threat. So what I do here is I go to the list of threats, I click add, and now I can create my own threat type. And that will be a file with malicious content is uploaded. And then I could put some description. Of course, I want this to be much more descriptive than blah, typically. And then I put a severity. This severity is the standard severity that I have. So what I'm doing right now is to do two things. Is to create a new threat type, which is essentially the definition of a potential attack. And that threat type is linked to my knowledge base that is associated to the threat model. And it is available in this threat type list. And this is the one. And also, I'm creating a threat event. The threat event is the association, essentially, of the threat type to a specific context. In this case, the context is the Azure storage. So now I can identify mitigations. And those mitigations could be standard mitigations or non-standard. Standard mitigations are those above. In this case, it's new. Standard mitigation is the concept of, as you know, each problem has typical answers. And in security, it's much better to identify and apply a standard answer to a problem than to invent security. This is much more real and much more evident, I would say. For example, when we are talking about cryptography, everyone knows not to do its own cryptography because it's going to fail. So
I wish that was true. I wish that everyone knew that.
Yeah, definitely. This is at least something that we keep saying, and we have said it for years, but yeah, sometimes there are still someone keeps trying. That said, the idea is to have those standard mitigations, and the standard mitigations are already a guidance provided to users, because users of the tool, because if you know that the mitigation is a standard for a threat, then you are facilitated. In a way, you are guided in adopting those standard mitigations. In this case, it's new, the threat. So I don't have standard mitigations. I can select one of the mitigations that are already here. Or I can create a new mitigation. In this case, I want to create a new mitigation. That will be, no, I think that I have actually a one. I can search. So I'm typing Defender. Oh, wow. I have already configured Azure Defender for storage. That looks a correct answer in this case. So I can select this one. And then I can put a strength for this mitigation. That strength would apply to this specific case. Let's say that it's average. I don't trust too much antiviruses in general. So average looks correct. And then I have a status, which is important because the actual risks that we have are associated to the mitigations that are already present in the system. So the current risk. So if the risk, for example, if the mitigation is existing, I will need to lower than the risk that I have associated to this threat. So let's imagine that it is existing. I could have proposed that will be something that I propose, not really existing, approved, implemented and planned, which will describe different statuses for the mitigation. But let's leave existing. I could have specific directives, additional information that I will put. I could put that there any additional detail specific to this implementation. And then I click OK. Now, having said that the mitigation is existing and that the strength is average, I needed to lower the severity. This is currently a manual activity. So you needed to, for example, to say, okay, it's not high, it's medium. Then you may ask how you define the severity. And that will be a great question. So how can I do that? The typical way is to use a bug bar. And the Threats Manager Studio defines the bug bar here in the severity list. So you have the standard levels of severity, and you have the definition. At the very start of the engagement, what I do is to ask the customer, okay, those are standard definitions for the different severities. Do you agree with them? What are the definitions that you have? So this helps to essentially guide the assignment of the different severities. You may be more comfortable, perhaps, or used to define severities as probability and impact, and then some dreadful formula that would calculate the severity. And why dreadful? Because, of course, we have dread, and that is an example of a formula that will help to calculate the severity. Really, those are all qualitative. Even if you have some math there, still they are qualitative, and they have errors. So for this reason, what we do in Microsoft typically is to rely on something simpler, which is directly the severity. And that brings a design choice, which is to make the interface as simple as possible, with less detail possible. So you can create extensions to support CVSS, to support dread, if you will, or whatever you want. And at the end of the day, you can integrate that inside a tool. The tool is entirely extensible. The only thing is that there is a ready property defined severity that shows the severity. So you can bring then your calculations to the final severity as you will.
Simone, can I ask a question real quick?
Please.
So you've shown a couple of extensions, and I know this is open source software, and we can talk about, some of the challenges behind the open and the closed source that's incorporated with this. But what I'm very curious in learning right now is, what are the extensions that you want to see the community contributing right now that could be helping you and your team, or you've heard from others are lacking, but you yourself haven't had the time to
Great question. Thank you. Yet. First of all, there is a separation between the part that is open source and the part that is not. Everything is free. What you see here, this GitHub repo, is essentially the open source part. And it includes the engine that is used by Threats Manager Studio. It includes samples. It includes essentially an SDK, which is here in the templates, and tools, and the engine, and also extensions. So here you see the various extensions that are already included here. Now, what I really want people to do is to start thinking what is needed for them to integrate, to extend this experience to what is most needed. For instance, you see that there is a DevOps functionality. It's not already surfaced. It's going to be surfaced with the next delivery, with next version of the tool. That will allow to integrate with Azure DevOps initially, and potentially with Jira, with the GitHub Enterprise, and with other systems. There are a lot of extensibility parts. one could be to create your own extension to integrate with some of those systems before I do that. So contributing to the community. Another way is to create your own functionalities, for example, to evaluate the quality of the system. Here you see that the quality dashboard that shows different parameters. There are 27 of them. Those are entirely extensible. So you can create additional evaluation parameters to identify and evaluate the quality of the threat model. You can define different ways to export reports than those that are already included. You can integrate with external systems. There is an idea that probably in the future will be implemented to use threat model to generate a threat model from existing systems, which is not something I entirely love, because threat model is first and foremost an activity to be done during the design of a system and then to continue. But still, if you want to do an assessment or you want to do a threat model of a system that is already existing, it may be useful to scan the solution itself. Imagine a solution on AWS or a solution on Azure. If you can scan a subscription and then get your entities inside the system, inside the threat model automatically to create your diagram, at least from something. There are a lot of other ideas. For example, integration with Mitre. That is also another interesting element to load threads. There is something already. In fact, you see here there is a functionality to import from KPEC, threads from KPEC, but it will be much richer than that, including CWE, including attack, and perhaps why not even including integration with some source, some database of mitigations. I still have to find that, but I assume that someone has created some in that line.
Simone, so by default, what framework are you using to get the threats?
Yes, the source that that's entirely free, really. What I have is a separation between the tool itself and the templates. The templates being those knowledge bases that I have initially shown to you with this import functionality, import template. So what I'm doing, for obvious reasons, I'm focused on Azure and solutions and everything that goes in that direction. So what I'm doing is to use official documentation from Microsoft related to the various mitigations that could be identified. The work that I'm doing, and I've started to do that. Oops, I think it's here. Yes. So what I've started to do, it has been done with the Azure Pass Core. So this is already downloadable. Has been to identify the different threats that are associated to the mitigations, and then to reconstruct, if you will, starting from the mitigations, the rest of the world, the threats, essentially. And that's the process that I've followed. But the idea is to do that, the same job for Azure, definitely, for the various templates, but to integrate much more with Mitre databases, and then to create essentially a view that will be much more dynamic than what we currently have.
Simone, I had a quick question. Okay. Oops, sorry. Do you want to go, Nikki?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. You go ahead.
Right. So I just wanted to kind of go back into really, I think it's more of a philosophical question more than the actual platform. So as a threat modeling practitioner, I'm sure I've kind of heard this before as well, but I was kind of going through your threat modeling VNext blog on your site, and one of the things that you kind of very clearly point out is really the genesis of the platform coming up from a framework or from a methodology that's very different from some of the other competitions that you kind of mentioned there. So this kind of curious and like everything else in threat modeling, you kind of have multiple personas, if you will, who do threat modeling in typical product engineering workflow. So I was kind of wondering, what would you consider the actual driving framework behind the platform by itself, in terms of not to really put this into a methodology, but just kind of curious in terms of how you would compare this with other modes of doing threat modeling. If that question makes sense. I'm just kind of taking a leaf off of your blog there.
Yes, definitely. I have to tell a secret, so nobody will know that, of course. And the secret is that actually the genesis of this tool has been to address a specific need that we felt, not only me, also colleagues in doing threat models. So it was a very tactical solution to be done, to give space to experts, to give space to mitigations, and to address the need to have a solution that is flexible and extensible, something that was not present previously and that was not available. So that has grown a lot with the time. And at a certain point, we started to think, okay, but what is the point of threat modeling? What are we really satisfying? Are we really reaching its possibilities, or we should do something more? So this was the considerations, and based on these questions, what we understood is that threat modeling is about risk, is about really risk management. It's a part of it. So the idea is to give to threat modeling a central role in risk management, and to ensure that all the different roles that we have in a company that would work in general, that would handle risk, would have some benefits out of it. So another thing that we understood is that we do not know a lot of things, that we needed to understand how the different roles would benefit from such an approach. We will need to understand what are the different ways to interact with the threat model. An example will be DevOps. For a lot of organizations, threat model is a problem when we talk about DevOps. It's not only about the complexity of doing threat model, the cost of doing threat model. It's also because threat model is an activity that is not well integrated. There are tools that provide this sort of integration, but they are providing functionalities that essentially are simply, in most cases, generating problems out of the diagram. So the automatic threat generation that you have seen, that even Threat Manager Studio have, is providing only some benefits. But the real benefit is to understand the system, to put the business angle to it, and to identify the problems that are associated to how the solution, the type of data that are managed, and the specific business problems. So we needed to do something more. We needed to evolve how threat modeling is perceived, how threat modeling is integrated, and to ensure that the different roles that we have would get out of the threat model what they need. This is also related to some very practical problems that we have faced with the customers. Not directly, but looking at how they do threat models and the problems that they have with threat models. There are organizations that are trying to do threat modeling, but is threat modeling giving the value that they expect? I've seen organizations reverting to use only the diagrams for threat models because everything else was too expensive. But the diagrams are not threat models. Diagrams are only representing the system without identifying the problems, without identifying the mitigations. So they are not useful. I have seen other organizations trying to create really complex, typically Excel files, where you needed to put details about, okay, what is the attacker? Who cares about who is the attacker? How can you guess who is the attacker? There is a problem, and you needed to address that. You need to focus on the security risks, not science fiction, okay? Because if you think that an attacker could be a script kid and instead is another one, and if the intention is different, you need to address in different ways, perhaps, but what is typically the problem is you needed to give some value in a very short term, in hours sometimes. How can you do that if you think in such complex ways? So a lot of customers are starting to think, is threat modeling really providing me the quality and the value that I need? Should I stop? If I compare threat modeling with, for example, some best practice or some checklist, is it providing me additional value? If you are generating automatically the threats with a tool, including Threats Manager Studio, and you only use the automatic threat generation, I would argue that essentially not. Perhaps you can ditch threat modeling. You may save a lot of money, of time. So we have a problem with quality, and this is essentially something that is extremely important.
Simone, I'd like to give the opportunity. We have quite a few practitioners here on the table, and I just want to hear from them on how they do it in their organization and how would that tool fit? What have they used? Yeah, what have you done and what would work? And does TMS seem to be a tool that could work in your organization? Are they mature enough? Because you seem to say that this is a tool for expert, and that's not, not all organizations are that mature. So what are we supposed to do in that case? Maybe who wants to go first? Nicole?
No, I was going to sort of follow up with it depends on the organization, right? And you might get an organization that's done threat modeling before and they have some, competency in that area, or you might get an organization that has yet to start this. How do you begin to sort of funnel this down into actionable items if it's your first time threat modeling in an organization? Like, who do you need in the room? Or, what do you start with? An architecture diagram? What do you do next? I think, just walking through the mechanics in general for everyone on the panel, I'm like, what are, in your experience, successful ways to get the process started going and, generate enough traction here to make it work?
Great question. First of all, let me tell you that I don't think that Threats Manager Studio is a tool for expert. This is not the intent. It's the intent is to provide a tool that is flexible enough to change its behavior and interface to suit different needs. To answer your question instead, I will say that the other question, I will say that the process is not much different from a standard threat modeling process, at least from what we have in other situations. And let me point. Can you go to my screen, please, Nancy? Thank you. So there is a set of articles in the site where there is a description of the whole flow to perform threat model with the Threat Manager Studio, starting from the diagramming, threats and mitigations, and the phase where the expert adds is know-how, and quality and communication. And those 4 articles are essentially describing how to perform the activity. I'm going to summarize in a moment. There is a missing one, in fact, that I'm going to publish this weekend. And it's very important, but it's not based on Threat Manager Studio. It's the interview phase. So and that's exactly the point. When you start, how can you start to perform the analysis of the system? And this is something that applies to both new projects and existing projects, and could be done in different ways. So, of course, there are projects that are extremely complex, like Azure itself, like Microsoft Windows, or an operating system, or so on and so forth. And that would require big threat modeling initiative. Other systems, other solutions may require just a few hours of a threat model. So what is done typically is first to collect information related to the design of the system, like an architectural diagram, like documentation. Then what we do is to try and plan meetings depending on the type of engagement. So if it is a short engagement, we would have some meetings done in a certain way, smaller meetings, typically perhaps even a single one. If there is a standard sized engagement, we would have a couple of hours of meetings in 2 days, one after the other. And there are other alternatives. During those meetings, the idea is first to have a meeting with the business stakeholders, with the people that would tell you from their point of views, what are their concerns with the solution? What are the important aspects? What they consider fundamental in the solution that you needed to focus on. And you wanted to consider the threats to those characteristics as most important compared to others. Then you continue analyzing, having interviews with a set of people from the team. I typically do that with focusing on the architects first, and then continue doing meetings, expanding the audience.
Simone?
Yes, please.
So the thing that I really like is it seems to be focusing on helping consultants or people work with the business to create a threat model. Is there any way that teams internally can use Threat Manager Studio to sort of work collaboratively on the threat models and the designs, or is that a future plan?
That's a great question, Rebecca. Thank you very much. Now, there are limits to the tool. And this is exactly one of such limits. I don't think that Threat Manager Studio can fill all the different needs. The tool has been designed to be something used essentially by a person at a time. There is the possibility to have multiple persons working on the same threat model, but you cannot have 2 persons working at the same time on a threat model. So there is a lock, essentially, that will block this, because it is based on a file. And if you have multiple persons working on the file, you will have essentially them erasing part of the work of the other. So that's not working. And yeah, that was experience. I've used that in for more than 2 years. So I've learned about this in the hard way. I'm not positioning this as a tool for teams to be used together. The idea is to provide instead an engine that could be used to create other solutions without having the need to create an object model, without having the need to define some basic extensions, simply focusing on the rendering part. So this is, to answer also a previous question, this is something that could really see the community contribution, to have tools built on Threats Manager platform, which is the open source part, to create something much bigger than Threats Manager Studio to fulfill the needs that the community has. Any other question?
Yes.
Please.
Nikki? Okay, let me go first then. Simone, so can you export the threat models, and in which format can we export?
Yes, there are various ways. The file the main file is a JSON file inside a zip, and it has the extension TM. You can simply rename the extension and open it to get a look at the JSON file. There is also another format that is already present with the latest version. It is TMJ, which gives you directly the JSON file, so without having the need to export anything. Of course, a JSON file, you can work directly with the file, even if the recommended way is to use the object model, because it's much more convenient and you have already all the different concepts. The extensibility allows to do everything you want. For instance, there are in the standard libraries the extensions to create your own report. And with the creating your own report, I mean that you can create a document with your template, and essentially by using an add-in for Word, you can inject placeholders, or you can simply type those placeholders. There's no problem. They are documented. So you can put those placeholders, and the document then is provided to Threats Manager Studio, and it automatically generates the report for you. And those are just some examples. You can have, by using the extensibility, you can create whatever you want.
And with regards to the inputs, you mentioned that the starting point is an architectural design.
Yep.
So can I ingest some Visio file into Threats Manager Studio, or do I have to redraw it in Threats Manager Studio?
Currently, there is an extension to import threat models done with the Microsoft Threat Modeling tool and even templates. And there is also extension that are allowed to a tool that allows to import massively files built with the threat modeling tool, even templates. Visio, no, I don't have that right now. That's another thing that community could create, of course, and it could be done even using the creating an add-in for Visio. That's absolutely, perhaps that will be the easiest way to do that. In the future, who knows?
So, oh, go ahead. Nikki, were you going to say something?
No, go ahead. No, you go.
Okay. So when Nancy asked the question earlier, I wanted to kind of share some of my own experiences trying to threat model, and then talk about how some ways that I see this tool helping that with organizations. One of the main things that I would have problems with is with having to do it in Visio, and then have like an addendum, have it be an Excel document or a Word document that explained what was happening in there. So one thing I really appreciate is you have the flow of information, you have those threats directly tagged to those flows. That's helpful, and I don't have to then add an addendum. So I see that as a very positive aspect. This next question I have for you is more about the political aspect of this, in the sense that I found that it was always very difficult to do threat modeling if folks weren't coming to my team to ask for it, or if it wasn't following an offensive assessment that we did, and they now were like, okay, we actually do need to work on this. And so, the ideal starting point is during the design phase and those early iterations in a project to start doing threat modeling, have it built in, have security built in from the beginning, push left, etc.
Great.
But how, a lot of folks are going to be watching this and are going to be saying, well, I already have this monolithic piece of software. Maybe it's already in production, multiple releases into production. How would you recommend getting started to kind of get a grasp on their threat model if it's something they're bringing in at the end? Because doing it at the end is better than doing it not at all. So how would you recommend doing that without it being too kind of overwhelming? Sorry if that question is overwhelming. That's a lot.
No. Well, my experience is that if, first of all, not many knows about the threat model. Perhaps some have heard the term, but it's extremely rare to find someone who actually does know what a threat model is or has implemented the threat model. So it's a matter of explaining the value and showing what really it is all about. Actually, the latest experience that I have is that it's extremely easy to explain the value of the threat modeling experience by showing a specific function of my tool, which is the dashboard, this thing. So if I show this to a business decision maker, it's a no-brainer for them. They are happy and they buy this experience. This chart very easily shows first the current risk. Of course, now it is, you see that there is a problem due to the size of the screen, but normally it shows the number. You see, in any case, with this pie chart, the current status of the security. Everything is high severity because we didn't do the threat model. It's not really normal, but otherwise it's okay. You show here in the mitigation by status the fact that you are recognizing the good things done by the team. So this is just to tell them, okay, I'm not telling you bullshit. I'm telling you the status of the system as it is, and recognizing how it has been implemented. I show them how they can improve in a very visual way. It's qualitative. I every time explain this. It's not precise. It gives you an idea about the fact that if you have a risk that is currently 100 or 42, if you want, then after you have implemented the short-term mitigations, the risk goes down, perhaps just a little, perhaps a lot. Then it goes down after you have implemented also the midterm, and then the long term. Now, let me show you what happens if I have, for example, a maximum value that is slightly higher. You see that I represented the acceptable risk, and then I can show them that the long-term situation will be acceptable. So they understand the effect of the mitigations at this point, and very intuitively. Those charts, also this chart, and there are other pie charts that I'm going to show, highlight the effect of the mitigations on the severity. So you see, by looking something like that, it's very visual, the fact that they are spending money to understand those risks. They are going to spend money to mitigate, but then there are effects, there are results. And this type of awareness is something that they value a lot, because understanding the current risks, understanding that the solution may have problems and how to address them is invaluable for a non-technical person.
So, question. So, a lot of these mitigations, right? SQL, if you could, like encrypting SQL database at rest, encrypting data in transit. Do you see a way where that can get turned into some automated preventative check? It just feels like, the benefits of the cloud give us the ability to, that gets treated basically as code. So is there any way or feedback cycle in which the outcome of the threat model can inform future automation so that we never have to worry about that again? Or how do you see that?
That's a great question. Actually, I will say that I'm very far from that. But I can see what you are saying as a community effort. The integration of a tool, this is entirely open. Again, I cannot stop saying that. But this can give you an idea. With this page, can you show, please, my desktop? Okay, great. So you see that this page, the extension configuration, shows 142 components. And this is very important to understand that the tool is based on a lot of components that are loaded. And as I provide components, you can provide components as well. And that you can make them loaded automatically by the tool through a configuration like this one. So what you're asking is definitely something very interesting. Also the possibility, I will say, imagine to link to some cloud system or to a SIEM to get the feedbacks related to the current risks, current attacks that are executing. And to change dynamically the severity of the risks based on the prevalence of some type of attacks. That will be very, very powerful, right? Because
from a detective side, like what you're describing, 100%, but also from a preventative side, like
absolutely.
Cloud misconfigurations are like, it's not that it's easy to solve, but they're difficult sometimes to locate. And that's where like maybe sort of, automation or just secure by default kind of things come in to help alleviate some of those really difficult to find misconfigurations. I mean, some of these Terraform scripts are like thousands of lines long, right? So, I think if as you threat model, if you can kind of offload, like, yeah, of course we're going to encrypt the database at rest because it's part of our automation, right? I think that's kind of powerful, but yeah.
Agreed. This is you need to think about that as a tool for the community that can be driven by the community. So it's yours to play with it, to create extensions, to create your models. I'm more than happy to collaborate with anyone to help this sort of experience. The SDK is not well documented. This is known. When I foretell the time that this will be addressed. So definitely that's something where you will be able to do a lot.
Well, we're coming up on the hour, so I know that Tanya needs to hop off.
Can we extend a couple of hours?
Yes, every time we have conversation with threat modelers, it always goes so long. I know Tanya needs to leave, but I want to take the opportunity maybe to do a last roundtable just on your impression, on last comments before we wrap up. So. Go ahead. Who wants to go first? Maybe Rebecca, I'll pick on you.
Yeah, I actually had a question all lined up. So I don't know how long it will take to go into, but when I was using the tool, I noticed that there was this really neat feature to have an execution mode. And so you could change it to, I think there was like Pioneer, Manager, a few different levels. Are you able to just quickly run through how we might use that in a day-to-day?
Yes, they are essentially a way to show only part of the different functions, because they can be overwhelming. The simplified mode is designed to focus on the threat model activity only. The expert mode is a little richer and allows to essentially to create templates also. Pioneer has the latest and greatest functions, and then there are management and business that are instead much simpler. And perhaps with them you cannot even edit the threat model. Read only.
It's a good way to keep people from playing with the threat models when they shouldn't be.
No, because you can change at any moment. It's not a security feature. It's not. The intent is to help them to focus on what they want to do.
Yeah.
I'll pick on you, Rahul, now. Is there any last word you want to tell us before we wrap up? Or your impression?
Yeah, I mean, no, as someone who's been extremely counterculture with the traditional threat modeling from that perspective, so it's always great to kind of see every new tool that comes in. For me, one of the two biggest reasons why in most cases threat modeling fails is it's probably an overemphasis on how to do threat modeling, which means that you kind of get really engulfed into the methodology of doing threat modeling, and two is not really knowing the motivation to do threat modeling, because I personally kind of believe that there are if you have something to do with product engineering in any capacity, you can threat model from that vantage point as well. So and for me, I think I like the fact that and I probably had more questions, but I think all of that kind of got answered when Simone did show that there were multiple extensions that you could potentially build for you to probably tread the line of your motivation to do threat modeling. If your problem is threat modeling in Gale, then probably you build something to kind of convert the output of the threat model in security test cases, and then that moves into your DevOps pipeline or whatnot. If your motivation is to kind of draw a line between the vulnerability and the initial threat that caused that vulnerability, you could build that as well. So I think if more we get extendable DIY frameworks of threat modeling, I think that kind of meets, in my book, the motivation and the intention to do threat modeling. So I think that's great.
Thank you. Isaiah, I saw that you dropped a comment in the chat. Maybe you want to address that on camera.
Oh, sure. I mean, just thinking about the potential for this tool, and something that Nikki said about could we have, like, especially when it comes to deploying cloud infrastructure, could we have like auto mitigation? And one thing I could see is, depending on because I know you have templates, Simone, and so like you have the Azure template. Let's say there was also an extension for automatically having like add-ons or auto-generated scripts, or maybe it's just like a script template that's tied to a specific mitigation. That's the same regardless of the platform, or excuse me, that's the same regardless of the template that you're using. So like if you know that you're deploying things using Terraform, then in AWS, and there's templates that are automatically created setting AWS firewall rules for specific mitigations, I think that'd be pretty cool. And I know, Nancy, you'll also probably come back to me just to ask if any final things. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to answer the questions that I've had and others have had. And I think it's pretty cool. The platform, the tool is cool, and also the platform and its extensibility is, I think, could help folks if they're willing to take some time to learn it, buy into it, and then contribute to it.
Thank you, Isaiah.
So thank you.
Nicole.
Yeah, no, this was great. Yep. No, I just wanted to thank you. This was great. It looks like a lot of time and effort went into building this, and I think it was time for threat modeling platforms to get like a fresh coat of paint and like a sort of extension-based kind of model. I haven't seen that before unless I've missed these. So I think that's like really a big change, right? Because you could make this more extensible. And at the end of the day, I think a lot of us on the threat modeling side are like, well, it's hard to get people to care about it, right? Like we're constantly being like, it's cool, guys, but like you should care about it. And I feel like bringing in extensions and ecosystems really will help with that. So
thank you very much.
Kate, you're the last on the list. Go ahead.
I did love the tool. The only thing that I was hoping to see more is how exactly do you do the threat modeling from start to finish. But I think that you probably do have some other videos out there that people can view, and beginners can also start doing threat modeling.
I was going to add that I added every single link that Simone gave me. So he has a brand new YouTube channel. Simone, I think you've been like starting or rebooting your project because you have a brand new Twitter account, brand new YouTube account. So I think it's you're excited about this project, and so is everybody. So if you're looking for information, everything is in the description below. If you have anything to add, Simone, please send it to me, and I'll add that. And I'll also give you the last few seconds, few minutes to maybe close off and tell everybody what your expectation is from the community and where they should follow you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I wanted to collaborate with you all. This is the tool has been the result of 3 years of work and has grown, as you can see it, due to the feedback received. It would have been a very limited tool, extremely limited tool, if it has been me doing that alone. So now that I've been able to extend to the security community as a whole, I really invite everyone to collaborate and to work to feel this initiative as its own and to work with everyone to make it better. We can really make a tool that is useful for everyone.
Well, fantastic last words. I'll close off the show by saying that this is the last show of the year. We've had a really, really busy year at DevSlop, and we're happy with how things went, and we're excited by how everybody's been enjoying, I guess, the show and participating. So please come back next year. So we're taking a couple weeks off to get back our energy and get fresh ideas, but we do have plans for you for next year. I want to thank everybody that accepted to be here on the panel today, and Simone to present his tool and for this presentation, but also all the guests that said yes to DevSlop, and all the co-host guests that also said yes to participate in the conversation, because you make the show. So thank you, everyone. Have a happy and safe holiday season, and we'll see you all in the new year. Bye. Take care.